The national chairman of ruling All Progressive Congress (APC), Abdullahi Adamu, yesterday came under attacks over his comments that the federal government could borrow till eternity to fund the country's infrastructure regeneration as the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association (NECA) Labour Party PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar, an economic expert, faulted his declaration. Hello and welcome back to Newsroom Nigeria. This is where we give you hot, fresh, and sizzling news all day long. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do well to subscribe. Turn on the post notification bell. Don't forget also to give this video a very massive thumbs up. Without further ado, let's dive straight into the details of today's news. Adamu, while speaking in an interview on Trust Television late Monday, had said the government could borrow from now till eternity, saying countries like the United States and the United Kingdom borrow funds from international financial institutions to meet their needs. Its position was, however, faulted by NECA, Labour Party, and other economic experts who noted that the nation's debt profile had become unsustainable in the face of dwindling resources, stressing that there were alternative ways of funding infrastructure. They also added as further increase in the national debt could lead to high inflationary economic growth or no growth at all, a much higher cost of capital in the economy, and possible sovereign default and its damaging effects. President Muhammadu Buhari has been criticized for the increased borrowing of the federal government since the inception of the administration in 2015. This led to 29 trillion or 67% increase in the national debt to 41.6 trillion at the end of March 31st, 2022, from 12.6 trillion at the end of 2015, as the federal government continued reliance on borrowing to fund its annual budget. Recently, the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, disclosed that federal government had to borrow 3.9 trillion between January and April this year to fund its expenditure and service its debt during the period. During the 4-month period, the federal government recorded revenue of 1.63 trillion, spent 4.72 trillion, out of which 1.94 trillion was spent on debt service. Adamu said, "I remember a program we had here. I told you and I thought you believed me that I have no quarrel with government borrowing. Government can borrow from here till eternity. The American government borrows, the Canadian government borrows, the United Kingdom borrows, France borrows money from the World Bank and such other institutions. Nigeria is no exception. What I quarrel with is if the money is not used for a purpose and the infrastructure we are developing across the country is from this source. You also have to appreciate the fact of the level of revenue accruing to the government. Oil is the main thing. We want to see how best we can diversify. These issues affecting the revenue accruing to the government are not our making. No matter how good we are, they happen. When some countries sneeze, we catch a cold. The Ukrainian crisis with Russia is having an impact on our economy and even in bigger economies than our own. So why do we limit ourselves in our thinking? Reacting, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association (NECA) said there were alternative ways of funding infrastructure, adding that debt should not be the first option. The umbrella body of employers in the country equally expressed worry over whether the funds being borrowed would be judiciously used, considering past experiences. The Director General of NECA, Wale Oyerinde, said, "While we are not against government borrowing to fund critical cash-back infrastructures, we are, however, concerned about the property of borrowing at this time when it has become expedient to drastically reduce our exposure to further debt. Of concern also is whether the funds would be judiciously used. Considering past experiences, it is no news that the nation's cost of governance is abnormally high and overboard. Rather than borrowing being the first option in view of current economic realities, it would be reasonable for the government to realign its priorities and look inward. There are several moribund government structures and assets that could be leased or sold off rather than leave them in a perpetual dilapidated state. In the last decade, the government borrowings have been to fund recurrent expenditure and expensive governance, leaving the country in huge debt with the consequences for current and future generations. While experts continue to agree that our debt to GDP ratio is healthy, the real challenge we must address is our debt to revenue ratio, which, according to the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, is tending towards negative. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Subscribe if you haven't. Give this video a massive thumbs up. Turn on the post notification bell. I'll see you in my next video. Bye for now.